And it's
Uh, Kilayim, not Caleb, Kilayim. Okay.
yes.
Um, we are above Aleph. What is an aris? If one plants a row of 5 vines beside a fence, 10 tefachim high, or beside a ditch 10 tefachim deep and four wide, it is given its tillage base of 4 amot. Beis Shammai says one must measure 4 amos from the body of the vines to the field, but Beis Hillel says from the fence to the field. Yochanan ben Nuri said all who say so are mistaken. Only if there are 4 amos between the from the roots of the vine to the fence, it is given its tillage space, and the rest may be sown. How much more? How much is the tillage space of the vine? 6 tefachim in every direction. Rabbi Kiva says 3.
Okay, hold on a second. Just this is a very important introductory thing. I don't want to just brush over it because we didn't do this together yesterday. Um, the the so everything that we've been speaking about up until now, with Beis Hillel saying that you need three and two to make a vineyard, that's talking about when the vines are trained on the ground. Okay, now we're talking about a trellis, which is the normal way of making a vineyard.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So if you just like had a sort of a decorative thing almost in your house and you're growing some grapes and it doesn't become a vineyard unless you've actually got three and two, then you call it a vineyard. But now when
Right.
you're actually training things onto a trellis, then even one row, and basically I'll agree that even one row that's trained onto a trellis, um, which is 10 tfachim high or even rolling into a ditch that's 10 tfachim deep, so that the grapes are actually hanging down like that. That's now back into the situation of Arba Amos. And now the machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is only where do you measure the Dalet Amos from? Is it from the base of the fence or from the base of the vine? And
Right.
that's what we see in
I,
this.
I've been noticing as I've been driving for some reason, like we're doing this, I see a lot of the vineyards, they have these poles sticking up straight up
Yes.
and going every so often, and they're attached, the vines are attached to them over
Uh-huh.
there. I
That's
always thought of the vines being on the ground, but I see that they're doing it
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other
yeah.
way.
The only thing that only the trunk is planted in the ground, and thereafter they train them onto the trellises.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
carry on.
Let me see. If an iris projects from a terrace, Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov says if he stands on the ground and gathers all of it, then renders forbidden 4 amos in the field. But if not, it only renders forbidden that which faces it. Reb Eliezer says also if one plants one on the ground and one on the terrace, if it is 10 tefachim high from the ground, it does not combine with it, and if not, then it combines with it. If one trains a vine over a trellis frame, he may not bring seeds beneath the rest of it. If he brought, he did not render forbidden. But if the new spread, it is forbidden. So too, if one trains over part of a non-bearing, fruit-bearing tree.
Okay,
So
so
these. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that these poles that I see, the trellises that they're training them, if they plant seeds underneath it, then he has a problem.
gone. Yeah, then you've got a Kilayim Karim. So
Right.
imagine this last mission over here, Mishna Gimel, where we're talking about training things over. Um, let's say over your mirpeset, you've got a pergola on the mirpeset or something, and you've got a vine trained over there. So
Right.
now that vine is going to grow. So therefore, it's also to plant any other vegetables underneath that thing, even after
Right.
under the part that hasn't grown yet, because you're just inviting disaster. So this at this point it's a durabanan, and it's not, and you haven't actually made hilaya kerim, but knowing that the thing is going to grow, if it does grow and you didn't clear it out, that's going to be usher. Okay.
Right.
So now comes the next case related to this is a madles gefen al miktas ilan machal. Now, what happens if it's a fruit-bearing tree? Okay. Now we said before an ornamental tree in ilan strak is the same as a pergola. Okay, the same halacha as a pergola. But a fruit-bearing tree, mutar lavi zera tachas amosar. So even if your grapevine is climbing over, let's say you've got a lemon tree. Okay, so your grapevine is climbing over your lemon tree, nice big lemon tree. Okay, and it's on a couple of branches over here, but you want to plant some tomatoes underneath the other side of your lemon tree.
Mhm.
Not a problem. You're allowed to do that because the fruit tree is chashuv in its own right, and it doesn't lose its status vis-a-vis the grapevine. It doesn't now become just a support to the grapevine. It's a lemon tree that happens to have
Right.
a grapevine climbing over part of it. Okay. Im hilecha chadash. So, and if it actually happened that the grapevine grew to a point where it's over your tomatoes, um, then all you have to do is cut it back and push it back when you notice it. So then it comes. If you leave it, you're going to have kilaya kerem as soon as it grows 1/200th.
Right.
Okay. But if you look at it and say, "Oh, I didn't mean for that to happen," you go and cut it down. No harm done. Okay. Maaseh. So we have the Mishnah records an actual event that occurred. Shehalach Rabbi Yeshua Etzel Rabbi Yishmael L'chvar Aziz. So the two of them went together to this place called Kfar Aziz. Ahu gefen mudle al miktas tena. So um, Rabbi Yishmael showed him this grapevine that was trained over a fig tree. Amar lo ma'ani lahavi zera al tachas hamosar. Am I allowed to plant other vegetables under the other parts of the fig tree? Amar lo mutar, no problem. V'he'elahu misham lebeis hamaganya. So we went to another location. V'he'elahu gefen she'imud al miktas hakora v'sadan shal shikma. So the sycamore tree is a tree that's grown for its wood,
Right.
and
We said that
it
you
grows
couldn't
these
do it.
big beams of wood that are very useful in construction. Excuse me.
Labrut. Labrut.
Um, it grows so it is actually considered, even though it doesn't have an edible fruit, it is a productive tree. It's used and harvested in the same way as a fruit tree, and it's treated therefore like a fruit tree, as you'll see over here. So it had lots of beams, but one of them had a grapevine trained over it. It says, since you've trained the grapevine over this particular branch, you may not plant vegetables under this branch, even under the parts where the grapevine hasn't grown, because that's like now a pergola that's got a grapevine over it. But the rest of the tree, that's fine, because the rest of the tree is considered like almost separate entities, and those are the parts that are still going to be harvested. So. So yeah, that's just a maaseh that shows the halacha.
When you say vegetables, under the tree or whatever, would that includes fruit? Then you're using vegetables and fruit in the same synonym,
No,
or
no, very different. You don't have
right,
kilayim just growing fruits next to each other. You're allowed to have a lemon tree here and an apple tree here, and the branches can intertwine, no problem at all. That's not called kilayim. It's only remember we've spoken about um, seeds with seeds. That's vegetables. So like
right,
annual crops, basically anything annual.
right,
You're not allowed to plant them together. The annuals have that prohibition. When you're talking about perennials, they're a lot bigger, lot more space, and there's no issue of planting them together. They're very clearly demarcated just by the fact that they're large individual plants. And you're allowed to plant vegetables under a tree. The only tree that you're not allowed to plant vegetables under is a grapevine.
uh,
Right.
okay.
That's a special case. Grapevine is a special case and it's the most severe case of Kilayim, where you've got to burn the result. Okay.
Because the yeshivas of the grapes, that
Um,
part of the reason. The
because
yeshivas of the grapes, is that part of the reason?
I don't know. It's because there's a kasov. I
Oh,
mean, yes, it probably is. You can learn something about the chashivas of grapes, but olives are also chashov, right?
right,
And figs are also chashov.
right, right, right,
Pomegranates, all of
right.
the. We don't have any issue of planting things under a pomegranate tree, but the grapevine, that's kilaya karim.
Okay.
Okay, Mishnah Hay. Ezehu ilan strak. Okay, so now that we know that there's a halakhic difference between a fruit-bearing tree and an ornamental tree, let's just understand exactly what is an ornamental tree, that we have this chumrah of not allowing you to plant anything under the rest of the tree if you've got a grapevine trailing over one part of it. Okay, kol she'eno ose peros, anything that does not produce any kind of fruit. So this is the Tanakama. Rabbi Meir Omer, hakol ilan strak, chutz min hazayis v'hatena. Says not. everything is considered, even like an apple tree, an orange tree, they are considered ornamentals in this regard, other than olives and figs. Okay, because this is just Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yossi Omer kol she'ein kamohu not in sados shlemos harei ze ilan srak. Rabbi Yossi's the definition is anything that you don't farm on a commercial scale. Okay, so if it's so I don't know what examples we have of that. I mean, maybe here, and ornamental pomegranates. So have you seen these sort of miniature pomegranate trees? I've got one in my garden. They're very pretty. They make fruit that's identical, looks identical to pomegranates, but they're much smaller and they don't taste nice.
Right. I have one in my garden over here. That
Right.
was
Okay. So
kind of
that is technically a fruit tree because it does produce a fruit,
right.
but according to Rabbi Yossi's definition over here, if there were a grapevine trailing over part of it, you would not be allowed to plant anything underneath it on the other part. Okay, because
And
it's okay. And halacha is the Tanakama that a fruit tree is a fruit tree is a fruit tree. It doesn't matter if you farm it commercially or not. It's you're allowed to plant under the other part.
but the gardener, when we first moved in here, he planted this for me. And I didn't know he was planting it. I wanted a pomegranate, but I wanted, like one that you could use, and it's not. So I
Yeah.
wanted to take it out, but you can't take it out because it still produces fruit, even though it's not edible
Did you
fruit.
ask a child on that?
I asked, and it was like, it was like, leave it alone, just leave it alone. So, but my understanding was that if you can't eat the fruit, if the fruit is not good to eat, then you could get rid of the tree. But
So I mean, yeah, just like Lamasim, my neighbors also had a peach tree that you could eat the fruit, but uh, technically you could eat the fruit, but practically it was very difficult because they're like every single fruit got infested with insects. Because there were worms in every single fruit, and so people didn't eat them, and then they fell on the ground and started stinking and rotting. Um, so they actually asked a shayla and got a heter to cut it down because
I have to keep it.
it was a bother to have it. It
Right.
made beautiful blossoms, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all
Mishna
right.
Mishna Vav. Piskei Aris. Shmona Amot Sfa'od. Okay, so where's a gap in the trellis? We just spoke about the trellis requiring you to keep the four amas space. Now, what happens if there's a break in in this trellis? How much of a gap do you need before you're allowed to plant in between? So it works out to be 8 amas and a little bit. Why? Because if you just have it exactly eight amas, then 4 amas is taken up from this one, and 4 amas is from that one, and there's no space to plant anything. So the odd is the gap in which you're allowed to plant anything. So anything that's inside the more the odd, the more you can plant in between these two rows. And we're talking about like if you've got a solid row like this, and then there's a gap in between there. So we're talking about this gap in between,
Right.
like where they're vertically pointing at each other. So that's where we're talking about. Okay. V'chol midos she'amru chachamim b'kerem ein bahem v'od. This concept of v'od and a little bit exists nowhere else. It's just in this particular edge case that we have a shear of the odd. Um,
Uh,
okay, this is the only place that we see such a concept. Eluheim piske aris. So, what is considered a break in the trellis? Aris shecharav me'em ta'or. If the trellis is destroyed in the middle, v'nishtayru bo chamesh gefanim mikan v'chamesh gefanim mikan. So there are five over here and five up there. So each one of them is now independently a kerem. Im yesh sham shmone amos lo yavi zera l'sham. If there's 8 amas in between the two parts that are pointing at each other vertically, um, you just practically cannot bring anything into there. L'shmone amos v'od. If it's 8 and a bit, nosnin lo kedei avoda so v'zorea es hamosar. Then yeah, you just have to leave the amount of space. Oh, kedei avoda so actually, the kedei avoda so is normally 6 tfachim. Yes, okay. No, so the Kedei Avodah so for the vine according to Chacham, still is the 4 amas. According to Rabbi Yochanan bin Nuri, is only 6 tvachim, as he says in Mishnah Aleph. right, and he was a Das Yachid over there. Um, and I was there, right? Zoras Masar, Shisha Tvachim Lechol Ruach. Right, so that was the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that the avoda is six tvachim in each direction, and that's not the main opinion. The main opinion that we hold is by Chachamim who hold it's Dalad Amos, and then he's allowed to plant the remaining space. Okay,
All
let's
right.
do Chazara.
Um,
Gimel
Gimel
Dalet.
Dal. If one plants 2 rows of cucumbers, 2 rows of gourds, and 2 rows of Egyptian beans, it's permitted. 1 row of cucumbers, 1 of gourds, and 1 of Egyptian beans is forbidden. 1 row of cucumbers, 1 of gourds, and 1 of Egyptian beans, and 1 row of cucumbers, but Eliezer permits, but the Kakaman forbid. One may plant a cucumber and a gourd in one hollow, provided this leans to one side and the other leans to the other side. The tips of the leaves of one lean to one side, and the tips of the leaves of the other to the other side, because whatever the Kakaman forbade, they decreed only on account of appearances. If his field was sown with onions and he wishes to plant it in rows of gourds, which Ishmael says, he uproots 2 rows and plants 1 row and leaves the standing crop of onions over the space of 2 rows and uproots 2 rows and plants 1 row. Rabbi Akiva says he uproots 2 rows and plants 2 rows and leaves the standing crop of onions over the space of 2 rows and uproots 2 rows and plants 2 rows. What the comments say, if there are not 12 cubits between one row and the other, he may not maintain the seeds between them. Okay.
Okay,
And we have
Peah, Zayin Dalet.
iron dollar. One is an OLED, whatever has neither catif or native. If it has catif or native to the owner. If there is doubt to the poor, OLED in the joint. If it's knit off with the cluster, then it belongs to the owner. If not, then it belongs to the poor. A single berry, Rabbi Yehuda says cluster, but then Chavim say OLED. If the person who thins the vines just as he thins his, he may thin this of the poor. So Rabbi Yehuda. The Meir says his own he may, but that of the poor he may not. And a vineyard in its 4th year, Beit Shammai says he has no chumash and it has no removal. But Beit Hillel says it has. Beit Shammai says it has parrot, it has oliot, and the poor redeem for themselves. And Beit Hillel says all of it is for the vat. Okay. And on to Shirin. Okay, Shirin. We have Aleph Ha A. If one pressed on a leak or squeezed water from his hair with his garment, Rabbi Yossi says what emerges is included in the law of if water is placed. But what remains is not included in the water placed if water is placed because he intends that all of it should emerge. If one blew on lentils to ascertain whether they are of good quality, Rabbi Shimon says they are not included in the law of water is placed. But the comments say they are included in the law of water is placed. And if one ate sesame seeds with his finger concerning the liquid in his hand, Reb Shimon says they are not included in the law of water is placed, but the comments say they are included in the law of water is placed. If one hid his fruits in water because of thieves, the fruits are not included in the law of water is placed. There was an incident with the people of Yerushalayim who hid their pressed figs in water because of the extortionists, and the rabbis ruled that the figs were tahor. If one places fruits in the rapids of a river in order to bring them with him, they are not included in the law of water is placed. Regarding the perspiration of houses, cisterns, ditches, and caves, it is tahor. Regarding the perspiration of humans, it is tahor. If one drank tamei water and perspired, his perspiration is tahor. If one entered drawing water and then perspired, his perspiration is tamei. And if he dried himself and then perspired, his perspiration is tahor.
Okay.
Okay.
Kalim, Yud Zayin Yud Aleph.
Yud Zion, Yud Aleph. There are instances in which the rabbi spoke of small amounts. Liquid and dry measures were prescribed in accordance with Italian measures, which are the same as wilderness ones. There are instances in which the sages stated that measurements vary according to the size of the individual. One who performs kmitza on a mincha offering, and one who scoops up the incense, one who drinks a quantity equal to the fill of his cheeks on Yom Kippur, and the food for 2 meals is an Erev Techulin. One's a food for a weekday, but not for the Shabbos. The other words of Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda says one food for the Shabbos, but not for the weekday, and both this one and that one intend to rule leniently. Reb Shimon says 2/3 of a loaf in which there are 3 to a kav. Reb Yochanan ben Broka says a loaf is worth a pinion, and 4 of saws cost a selah. There are instances in which the sages spoke of a large measure. A ladle full of corpse dust is measured against a full big physician's ladle. The split bean of a Nagayim is measured against the split Sicilian bean. One who eats on Yom Kippur the volume of a large date is liable if he ate the equivalent of it and its pit. The measure of skin bottles of wine and oil lose their tumah is a hole of the size of a large boral. Regarding a window that was not made by a person, its measure to spread tumah is the size of a large fist. That is the fist of Ben Takiak. Rabbi Yosef says the fist that is the same proportions as the human head. Regarding a window that was made by a person, its measure to spread tumah is the size of the hole made by a large auger of the temple chamber. This is as large as an Italian pinion, and is also as large as a Neonian cellar, and is also as large as a hole in a yoke. All utensils made from sea creatures are tahor, except utensils made from a sea dog, since it flees to dry land. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. If one makes utensils from something that grows in the sea and attached to the utensils something that grows on land, even a thread or string, something that is susceptible to tumah, the utensil is susceptible to tumah. Okay.
Okay, Sanhedrin.
Hedrin. Hedrin is Tes Gimel. If he stole from his father and ate in his father's dominion, or from Reb Yehuda's, or from get the page here. From Reb Yehuda says, if his mother did not correspond to his father, he does not become a Ben Sorah.
You jumped.
Skip the page. I skipped the page.
Yeah.
If he stole from his father and ate in his father's domain, or from others, and he ate in the domain of others, or from others, and he ate in his father's domain, he does not become a Ben Sorah Mora unless he steals from his father and eats in the domain of others. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Yehuda, says, unless he steals from his father and his mother. If his father was willing and his mother was not, or his father was willing and his mother was willing, if the father was not willing and the mother was willing, if he does not become a Ben Sa'ora, unless they are both willing. Rabbi Yehuda says, if his mother did not correspond to his father, he does not become a Ben Sa'ora Ma'ora. If one of them is missing a hand or was lame, mute, blind, or deaf, he does not become a Ben Sa'ora Ma'ora. And it says, and his father and mother shall seize him, which excludes those missing a hand, and they shall take him out, which excludes the lame, and they shall say, which excludes the mute, the son of ours, which includes the blind, does not heed our voice, which excludes the deaf. They warn him before 3 and flog him. If he repeats his misdeed, he is judged by 23. If he's stoned, not stoned, unless the original 3 are present, as it says, the son of ours, this son who was flogged in your presence. If he fled before the sentence was pronounced and his lower beard then grew around, he is exempt. If he fled after the sentence was pronounced and his lower beard then grew around, he is liable. A Ben Sa'or Ma'or is judged according to his eventual outcome. Let him die innocent, not guilty. For the death of the wicked is beneficial to them and beneficial to the world. But that of the righteous is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world. Wine and sleep for the wicked are beneficial to them and beneficial to the world. But for the righteous, they are detrimental to them and detrimental to the world. Dispersal of the wicked is beneficial to them and beneficial to the world. But that of the righteous is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world. Assembly of the wicked is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world, but that of the righteous is beneficial to them and beneficial to the world. And tranquility for the wicked is detrimental to them and detrimental to the world, but for the righteous is beneficial to them and beneficial to the world. Okay, and last, sukkah.
You know what? I need to get to Shachris. I'm
Oh,
gonna
I was
leave you there.
trying.